19 years old, full grown man in college, an adult for all intents and purposes, when I finally decided to start riding roller coasters. I was 19, it took me a little while. The reason is, at 5 years old, I had ridden Space Mountain in Disney World. Have you guys ridden that roller coaster? It's terrifying, right? As an adult now, I know that's not the case, but at 5 years old, I was terrified and mortified, so I rode this coaster. I swore it was the last one I would ever ride. But at 19, my opinion on that changed. We were on vacation with my family. I have my mom's parents lived at the time in eastern West Virginia, which is near Maryland, Pennsylvania, that whole area. And we were up there, as we do in the summertime, we would go up and spend a couple weeks at a time up there and swim in the pool and just hang out with our family. And it's a good time. And this particular year, my mom and dad decided we would do like a one-day getaway, and we would go to an amusement park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Have you guys ever been to Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania? Okay, so y'all know what I'm talking about. It may not be the greatest amusement park in the world. It's not bad. It's got some rides and stuff, but I will guarantee you unequivocally, without any kind of argument from anyone in here, it is the best smelling amusement park in the world. Has anyone ever been there? The whole place smells like chocolate. Like as you're riding around, and just the factory's right there, and you just get Hershey chocolate smell wafting over the entire park. It's a magical, magical place. So we're there. And we're there with my family, but also with me is this girl that I was dating that I'm pretty sure that she liked me, as I now know, as evidenced by the fact we've been married for 14 years, so it worked out all right. But she was with me. My parents were kind enough to let her come along this trip to kind of meet the rest of our family and everything, and so we were there. Meg was there with me, and we're walking around the park, and we kind of head back toward the back, and we find this roller coaster. And my whole family decides, hey, we're going to ride this. And I believe it's called the Comet. And I think if you look it up, it is probably the first roller coaster ever built in the developed world. And this thing is old, right? It's wooden, like the bolts, I don't know if they're actually in there, if they're shooting out every time a car goes by, but it was kind of scary, but it wasn't a giant coaster. And so I thought, I'm a grown up, like I'm going to ride this. I'm going to impress this girl because I need to let her know that I'm a provider, that I'm strong, that I can be counted on. She may have believed that because at the time she did not know me that well, so, but later on she found out a little different. So we hop on the coaster, and if you've ever ridden one of these old wooden coasters, they have just the single lap bar that kind of drops down. It's never tight enough. Like, is it like you're just sitting there and you're going, see, is this as far as the thing goes? And oh yeah, you're good, man. And I pull on it, and you're like, I mean, like I could come out of this thing. It's very possible. So I'm kind of trying to play it cool, sitting there. The lap bar's not real tight. And we start kind of ascending the hill, click, 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 click as you go up the hill. And I'm looking at everybody around me, including my dad and my younger brother who are in the car in front of us, all do what everyone does on a roller coaster, which is to put your hands up, right? So they got their hands up, and I'm like, I'm 19, I'm cool, I can do this. I put my hands up, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. I look at her Meg, and I'm like, hey, come on, put your hands up. And she looks at me, and now I realize it's from a deep, deep well of wisdom, and she goes, nah, I'm good. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I'm like, super cool 19-year-old guy riding a roller coaster. Like, I've done this a million times. In fact, I haven't since I was 5. And so we're going up the hill, click, 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 get up to the top, and we start to make our dive over the apex of this hill. And on the way down, as we go hurtling toward, which I know is certain death on the bottom of this hill, I realized about midway down I had made a horrible mistake. And so all of the color drains right out of my face. I grab the bar as hard as I can, and I white-knuckle that thing for the rest of the ride, screaming in a mixture of both terror and excitement as we fly down this roller coaster, certain at any moment the car is going to fly off to near and certain death. And as we get to the end, we survived, obviously, by the fact that I'm here. It was incredible. And from that moment forward, I was absolutely hooked on roller coasters. Like, I rode every roller coaster in the park that day. And since then, I have just absolutely enjoyed it and loved it. Have you ever had an experience like that? Have you ever had an experience where you do something for the first time and you realize, how did I live my life up to this point without this? Like, how did I get this far and not know how much fun or how great or how rewarding this could be? Maybe for you, it was a fun experience like a roller coaster at an amusement park, or maybe it's like a bungee jumping or skydiving. You're going, this is the greatest thing ever. And more power to you. I'm not to that point yet. Skydiving is a whole other level. I don't think I could do that. Why would anyone jump out of a perfectly good airplane anyway? You never know. Maybe for you, it's not that experience. Maybe it's someplace you traveled to. Maybe you went overseas for the first time, or maybe you experienced a city you've never been to before. You're like, yeah, how did I not know that this place existed? This is amazing. Maybe it was the first time you saw a sunrise or a sunset. I've seen a lot of them, but I remember when we were in Key West, serving Samaritan's Purse back in November, we left pretty early that morning to get home, and as we were driving over the 7 Mile Bridge, we looked, and the sun's like rising up over like the edge of the earth. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I was like, man, how did I not know that it looked like this? Maybe for you, it's like the birth of a child. The first time with your parent, or the first time your kid's born, there's something in that moment that you just go, I did not know my heart could hold this much love. And you didn't know how you lived up to this point without that. Maybe it's just having a good cry, like you watch something that just brings you to tears, or you hear a song that makes you cry. That happens sometimes. Or maybe you laugh so hard that you start snorting. Has anyone ever done that? That's my move. I actually did it last night. My wife and I were watching the show last night, and I laughed so hard. I was doing that, and it was great. She just looks at me like, unbelievable. Like, come on, you married me, you do it. Or maybe it's just a deep connection with somebody. Maybe you have this deep relationship with somebody that reveals so much more about who you are and about who Jesus is through that. But all of us, maybe at one point or another, have had an experience like that where we feel like, how do we get to this point without knowing that this was the thing? So before we kind of dive in today and we kind of explore that idea a little bit further, we're going to lay the groundwork and give you some assumptions. I want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page this morning. We all kind of are operating with the same information. So here's my 2 assumptions for today. Assumption number 1 is everybody feels like their life is incomplete, lacking, or missing something. Everybody in here feels like there's just something off. Even if things are going really good, there's just a little something missing, something that's lacking, something that's not fully complete. And our second assumption today is that everyone wants a rich or a full or a satisfying life. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I just want my day to be terrible today. Like, if you do, let's talk afterward. But everyone wants their life to have meaning. Everyone wants their life to be full and rich and rewarding and deep. And nobody wakes up wanting their life to be shallow and not full. And so if we're operating under those assumptions and we know that something's missing, all of us want a full life, there is good news today. The good news is that is actually offered to us. The full life, the rich life is offered to us. It's something that God promises. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how we can experience that. But let's kind of unpack that for a little bit to start with. If you have your Bibles with me, grab them, open them up. If your Bible app, you can open that up on your phone, however you want to do that. But we're going to look at a couple of passages. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Some of these may be familiar to you, but we're going to read them together and talk about it for a minute. The first one comes in the book of John. In the book of John, chapter 10. We're going to be looking at verse 10. John 10:10. And it says this, pretty popular. It says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. And I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. This is Jesus talking. Jesus says the thief, the enemy, Satan, the devil, he comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. So what the enemy wants to do, what the thief wants to do is to come and he wants to rob you of the fullness of life that God's offering to us. He wants to steal things from you. He wants to steal joy from you. He wants to steal experiences from you. He wants to take things away from you that would cause you to have a full life. But Jesus goes, hey, the reason that I've come so that you can have life and have it to the full. This full breadth of life, the full scope of what he has to offer. And the thing we have to understand about the full life, I think it's very important for us going forward. What we need to understand is when we normally think of the fullness of life, and I've done this for such a long period of time, when we think of the fullness of life, we think of everything that's good. So when we say fullness of life, you probably immediately went to all of the good things, the roller coaster rides, the birth of children, and the check coming in the mail that you didn't know was coming, and all of these good things that just happened to you. Man, this is what we're talking about, the fullness of life. And I would say, yes, that's partially true, but I think it's incomplete because when God talks about the fullness of life and He promises this to us, I think it's the full spectrum of life. I think it's experiencing pain. I think it's experiencing loss. Think all the other things that God wants for us, because there's something that we're to learn through that, and something that we're to learn in the hurt and in pain. You see, I think a full life is not a life that's free from those things. A full life is not the life that's free from pain, that's free from hurt. But a full life is a life that within those things we find Jesus, and Jesus does something amazing in and through all of those moments in our life. Because if you look at that and you go, I don't know about that, here's some support a little bit later on in the book of John, chapter 16, verse 33. Jesus even tells us this. He says, hey, look, here's the deal. In the world, you're going to have trouble. Like, there's going to be hard things that are going to happen. But his promise to us immediately after that is, take heart, I've overcome the world. So what Jesus is telling us is like, look, your life is not going to be free from pain. It's not going to be free from hurt. But what you can guarantee, what you can take to the bank is that I have overcome all of it, and I'm going to be with you through it. And so as we walk through these hard things, and all of us have, we can rest assured and understand that God is with us, and he wants to do something in us to help us experience the fullness of life. And so it begs a question to me as I think about that, because if you're like me and you're a human, at some point you have probably prayed some sort of a prayer for safety, some sort of a prayer for comfort, right? God, please help us get to this place that we're going safely. God, please help this person to succeed in this test. God, please help this. And so the question is begged, if God doesn't promise us a life free from pain and from hurt, then why is it that we pray for things not to be painful and hurtful? And I think the reality of that, I think the answer in that is that we, if we're very honest with ourselves, like gut level honest, we value comfort way too highly. We want more than anything to be comfortable. We don't want pain or hurt because we think it's going to be painful and hurtful, and that's true. But what if there was more? What if there's something beyond that? What if the thing that we were missing is the very thing that we're afraid to dive into, the very thing that we're afraid to hop onto and to see what God's going to do? The question that I want to dig into a little bit deeper and more specifically is what if the thing that we're missing is making ourselves vulnerable and being truly known? What if that's the thing that we're missing? Is to open up our hearts and to be truly known. Because I believe something fundamentally about each and every one of us. I believe that we were made in the image of God. I believe that with all my heart. And I believe that we were made to live in relationship. I believe that each and every one of us were made to live in relationship. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be an island. We're not meant to do this all by ourselves. But we are meant to live in relationship. You even see that at the very beginning of the creation story, when God makes Adam at the very beginning, and he makes all of the animals, and Adam is the last one made. He's kind of walking around. He's naming all these animals. He's looking for somebody to help, which is just a really, really weird thing to think about. Like he's looking and going, maybe the lion. And he's like, no, I don't think so. Look at me. And like, maybe the blue whale. He's like, well, I can't swim that good. And so he goes through all of these things and trying to find somebody to help. And God looks down and God even says, it's not good for man to be alone. Women, you know that, right? It's not good for men to be alone, right? So even in that beginning story, even in the very start, God looks and he goes, hey, it's not good for us to be alone. We need to create a relationship. There needs to be some sort of connection point here between humans. And so we're meant and made to live in a relationship. So if we're meant to live in a relationship, we're meant to know one another, if we're meant to be known by other people, what does that look like? How does that happen? I believe in order for us to really be known by somebody, that we also need to know ourselves. And not some sort of like new agey, like I just want to get to know myself better, but like really to look at ourselves deep, to be vulnerable in front of God, and allow God to show us who we are. Because again, God created us, we talked about that, God created us in his image, he made us to be in relationships. We need to go to the one that created us and go, hey, you made us, so what do I need to know about myself? We need to be vulnerable in front of God and allow God to open us up and expose the things in our lives that we maybe don't like, the things that we're trying to hide, or maybe even the things that we're not even aware that are going on, that are in there. Expose those and go, God, what do I do with this? Tell me who I am. I want to know myself better because I want to know who you created me to be. And then the second part of that is we've got to submit then to what it is that he says that we are. When God begins to reveal himself to us and begins to tell us who we are, we've got to believe that we have to submit to it. So we've got to trust that God knows us best. We've got to trust that if He created us, He gets to define us. And so when we allow God to show us who we are, I believe He says some really profound things to us. As a matter of fact, we just sang a song earlier today. We sang, I am who you say I am. And one of the things I love about this song, one of the things I love about the truth of it is we get to declare things together as people made in the image of God, things that God has said about us that we can know are true. He says, hey, you are chosen. You're not forsaken. You are made. You belong to me. He says, in my Father's house. So we know that God's our Father, so that means that we are a son or a daughter because He's our Father. We're a child of God. So all of these things that we get to sing together are true, and we need to believe those things about ourselves. We need to believe those things that God says about us and submit to those. And so you're probably sitting there and you're going, like, and I've done this too, so I've been in your boat. And you're probably going, okay, Chad, that sounds really good. I hear those things, I believe them, yeah, that's cool. But you don't know. Like, you don't know the depth of the things that I deal with. You don't know really who I am on the inside. And if you did, if you only knew me, I don't know that you would like me. I don't know that God would really like me if you knew me. See, the thing that's really beautiful about who God is that God is all-knowing. He already knows us inside and out. It says in the Bible that He knew us when we were in our mother's womb, that we're fearfully and we're wonderfully made. It talks about He knows the number of hairs on our head. He knows the days, our days are numbered. Like, He knows everything about us, but when we open ourselves up and we're vulnerable to Him and we go, God, I know you already know this about me, but show me something about myself and tell me who I am. God does that. He meets us there. He tells us who we are. And so if you're saying that, if you're going, you just don't understand, if you only knew me, if God only knew me, let me share something. I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here with you guys this morning, if that's okay. I have been in that place. There have been seasons in my life where I did not like being alone by myself. And it's not because I'm an extrovert. I am an extrovert. I'm an extreme extrovert. I rank very high on those scales. You can ask my family. They know I'm an extrovert. I love talking. I love singing at Target. I love walking around making my kids feel awkward. I love interactions with people. My ideal day is a day where I have meeting after meeting after meeting, and I go home and we have some sort of a party. That's like my ideal day. That would be incredible. I would lay down in bed that night and just my mind would be racing. I would be so excited for everything that happened. My wife, on the other hand, she's more of an introvert, and so that day terrifies her. She's like, no, I need time by myself. And I respect that, but the problem is in my house, myself and my two kids, we're all extroverts, and so she doesn't get that time, and so y'all pray for her. So that wasn't the case. It wasn't like I didn't want to be alone by myself because I just wanted to be with people. That's where I live now, and I'm so grateful that that's the issue. But there was a time when I didn't want to be alone by myself because I didn't like who I was. I didn't like what I saw when I was quiet and I allowed God to show me. I didn't like what I was seeing. See, I struggled with things like lust and with things like anger for a really long time. And if I'm really honest, what I had done is I had bought into a lie. I had bought into the lie that says that I wasn't good enough. I bought into a lie that says that no one would choose me, nobody wanted me. I bought into the lie that said I wasn't cool enough. I didn't wear the right clothes, I didn't wear the right shoes, my hair wasn't anything that is cool. I was buying into these lies. And because of that, I was searching for intimacy and acceptance in artificial ways, and just wasn't finding anything there that was doing anything to fill the hole and the missing piece of my life. I dressed a certain way to try to fit in, and it just wasn't doing it. Nothing seemed to make any sense. And so when I finally hit this point where I just said, God, I'm sick and tired of trying to figure this out. I don't even know who I am anymore. God, will you show me who I am? And what God did is I opened myself up and became vulnerable to God. God, in all of His grace and His mercy and His kindness, showed me some incredible things about myself. He showed me that He chose me. He showed me that I'm beloved. It means be loved. One that made me, I am, He loved me. He showed me that I was a son. I'm adopted into a family of a king. I'm a son of the king. How incredible is that? He showed me that I was cool enough. It didn't matter what everybody thought. God goes, I know you. You're awesome. You're made perfectly, just the way that I wanted you to be. So when I opened myself up and became vulnerable there, God showed me who I was. It gave me the courage to be able to then open myself up to those closest to me. I was able to open myself up, first of all, to my wife, and kind of came to her and said, look, I need to tell you what I'm struggling with. And the thing that was my greatest fear in that moment was not what I was met with. My greatest fear in that moment was in being vulnerable and opening myself up. I would be met with more of the lie that I agreed to. I would be met with more of the rejection and being told you're not good enough, how dare you do this, how dare you think this. And what I was met with, because my wife loves Jesus and allowed him to work through her in that moment, I was met with more affirmation of God saying, no, this is who you are. Let me tell you who you are. As she told me, look, I chose you. We're in this together. Like, I love you, and we're in this. I am yours. She told me, like, you know what, like, being cool you are cool enough. And that seems silly, but that's something that for years was like, why can't I feel like I'm accepted and I'm part of that? She was like, man, you're part of, like, you're part of my family. Like we made this decision to become a family together. Like, I don't take that lightly. And all these things that God did in and through her and through conversations and grace and time to reveal to me who he said I am through her, as well as him talking to me directly. You see, the beauty of all this is God knows you and me intimately. Like we said, he knows us so deeply and so perfectly, like no one else. But he wants us to know who we are. He wants us to see ourselves the way he sees us. He wants us to love who he's made us to be. The thing that we need to know is that we are not a mistake. You are not a mistake. You are fully capable of being loved, and you're fully capable of giving love. You're worthy of being told who you are by your Creator and your Maker. So something that I believe in, one of our points for today, is that to know someone is to love them. To know someone is to love them. And what I mean by this is when you begin to be known by God, when you start to know who God is, you love him even more deeply. When you start to know who you are, you begin to love who it is that God has created you to be. And as you begin to know somebody else, you begin to love who God has created them to be. Love is a hard thing, and some of you guys are going, there's some people that I'm pretty sure if I really got to know, I wouldn't love them. And I understand, I get that. Like, we all know those people, but I think the truth of the matter is, love is not something that we go into hoping to fall into. And I've been reading this book the last couple of months called Everybody Always by a guy named Bob Goff. Y'all heard of this book? It's incredible. If you've never read it, it's amazing. This guy is really, really good at expressing what it looks like to practically love people the way that God loves them, and it is just changing the way that I view relationships and I look at people. It's amazing. And this is something that he said in that book, which I thought was really profound. He says this, he says, love isn't something that we fall into. Love is someone we become. Love is someone we become. So as God has shown us who we are and revealing himself to us and showing us how he sees us, we are becoming love. That's what he's doing in and through us. And so as we begin to know other people and as we're becoming love, we have no choice but to love that other person. You see, Jesus talks about it like this. In the book of Matthew, there's this instance where Jesus is teaching to a bunch of people. And the religious leaders, and you guys have probably heard this story before, the religious leaders are always trying to trip Jesus up, right? They're always trying to catch him in some sort of a lie, some sort of a something where they can go, aha, see, you're not God, like, aha, we're going to crucify you. And that's what they're trying to do. They're just trying to discredit him. They're trying to make him, like, say, this guy's a false teacher, and so they keep trying to trip up, and they never can. And so this is one of those instances where the Pharisees come up to him, and they had heard that he already done this to the Sadducees, one of the other religious groups of leaders. And so the Pharisees come up to him and they go, okay, we've got a great question. I think we're going to get him on this one. So they ask Jesus, they go, Jesus, which is the greatest commandment? And the law at that time was over 600 rules that the Jewish people had to follow. And so they knew that if Jesus picked one of those, there was going to be another one that they thought was more important. They were going to be able to go, aha, see, he doesn't understand the law. He's a false teacher. And how Jesus responded to him is actually really, really interesting. We're going to read that together, starting in verse 37. They said, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus responds this way. He says, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. Okay? That sounds really good, right? The law, love the Lord your God with everything that you have. And that's hard to argue with. But then he goes a step further. He goes, and the second is like it. They're going, we didn't ask you for two, we just asked you for one. Jesus goes, I'm Jesus, I do what I want. Listen. He says this to him because the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. I think I just died. My microphone. So you get number one, there we go. Just my microphone. My microphone died. I'm good. So, don't worry, I'm still here. So he says, all the laws and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Love God with all your heart, mind, and strength. Love other people as yourself. Now see, what I think is really, really interesting in this, and if you've never noticed this, I'm going to point this out to you. The first one we can all get on board with, right? Like we talked about loving God. Like we're good with loving God. Like we want to love God with everything that we have, all of our heart, all of our mind, and all of our strength. But then when he talks about the second commandment, he says something really interesting. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. So he doesn't say love your neighbor and love yourself. He says love your neighbor as yourself. And so what we believe here is that self-love is implied in this statement. He's saying, look, if you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, you're gonna believe who he says you are, and you're gonna love yourself. And the way that you love yourself, by believing who God says you are, is the way you're to love other people. So God's saying, Jesus is saying in this moment, if you love me with everything that you have, you're gonna in turn love other people. That's what the entire law is set up to do. So if you can figure these two things out, man, you're going to live a life that's full and a life that is worthwhile. And so if to know someone is to love them, then I submit to you this. I submit that if we know God, when we know God, we love him. When we know God, we love him. And when we love God, we'll also love his people. So when we know God, we love him. And when we love God, we'll love his people. So to know God is to love him. And a little bit later on in the New Testament, there's this incredible verse that talks about this idea of what it looks like to love. And we can kind of confirm this idea that when we love God, we love his people. It's in the book of 1 John. It's a really popular verse. If you've heard it before, we're going to read it again together. It's in 1 John chapter 4, starting in verse 7. And it says this, if you're reading in the New International Version, which is what I've got up here, it says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God." I think dear friends is really cool. I think that's a great statement. I love the way it says that. But if you read in something like the New American Standard Version, which is what's up here behind us, it uses a different term. It says beloved. It says beloved means be loved, the one who is loved by God. Beloved, let us love one another. I think that just carries a different amount of weight. Like, hey, because you're loved by God, let's love one another, for love is from God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. But the one who does not love does not know God. Why? For God is love. So see, as we begin to know God, we begin to know love. As God begins to show us who he says that we are, as he begins to show to you and to me the things that he says that we are, we begin to become more like him. Because God is love, we begin to become love. You guys see what's happening here? Verse 9, by this the love of God was manifested in us, that God has sent his only begotten Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Now, propitiation is a fancy word that basically means the sacrifice for us. Like he sent God to stand in our place and take the punishment that we should have taken upon ourselves. Just a fancy word. I love it. Propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has seen God at any time. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. See, I think what is so beautiful in this passage is this idea of how we are becoming loved. By being loved by God, by being known by God, we are in turn becoming loved. And because we're becoming loved, love requires of us certain things. It requires of us to love one another. See, Jesus did this for us when he stepped out of his place in heaven and he walked on the earth with you and for me. And he came down as a sacrifice. What we see in this is us loving God is not the way we see God's love. But the way we see God's love is by seeing the fact that Jesus stepped into this world and died for each and every one of us. That's what it says in verse 10. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us. And he sent his son to be the propitiation for our sins. If each of us is made in God's image, if you and me, we're made in the image of God, like we said earlier, then every interaction, every relationship with somebody is a chance to encounter God. It's a chance to encounter the image of God. That's what a relationship looks like. It's a chance for you and for me to encounter the image of God. You see, God himself exists in relationship. If you think about it, there's Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three parts existing as one. It's a relationship. Like God in his very nature exists in relationship. He created you and me in his image, and so we're created for relationship. In every relationship, because we in God's image are encountering other people made in God's image, and we're becoming love, it's a chance to encounter the image of God in one another. So if you're sitting there and you're saying, this is all well and good, I don't know that I'm encountering God. I don't know that I've seen that. I don't know that I've experienced God in this way that you're talking about. Maybe one of the ways that we experience God is through connecting with his people. It's through being known by each other. In the same book that I talked about earlier, Everybody Always by Bob Goff, early on in the book, he kind of paints this picture for us, which I think is really, really cool. It shaped a lot of the way I've thought about kind of preparing for today. It really shaped the way I've been thinking about people and relationships over the course of the last couple of months. And he paints a picture like this. You know, Jesus came, like we said, he walked among us, right? Walked on this earth with you and with me, died on the cross for each and every one of us. And God is all powerful, so he can do whatever he wants. He's omnipresent, which means he's everywhere at all times. And so, if God wanted to, just in the same way he revealed himself to what is, in the scope of history, a very small number of people for the 33 years that he walked on the earth. He had a really close relationship with 12 of those guys. He had a really, really tight relationship with 3 of the 12. If he wanted to, he could do the same thing. He could show up. Like he could come in through the back door and go, hey, everybody, it's Jesus. I'm here. Let's go to lunch. Love to meet you. Talk to you. He could show up at your kid's sporting event and be like, hey, little Johnny's doing really good. And you're like, Jesus? He's like, that's right. He could do that if he wanted to. I don't think he would talk like that. But you know what I'm saying? He could do that if he wanted to. I believe God could show up, and I truly believe he could do this. But the fact that he doesn't do it that way, Bob Goff would say in his book, he says, the fact that he does it that way doesn't mean that he's avoiding us. That's not what that means. And he says this, I think it's just profound. He says, I think his plan all along has been for us to meet the people he made and feel just like we met him. I think his plan all along has been for us to meet the people he made and feel like we just met him. Those of you who are parents in the room, you understand this. If you spend any time, I've got 2 kids who are amazing, incredible kids. I've got a daughter, Layla, who's 10. My son, Gibson's 7. And man, they're awesome. They're great people. And they love Jesus, and I'm super proud of them. But if you spend any time with them, you are going to very quickly realize that they reflect the image of their father. My son, like even the way he says stuff, and he gives me a little thumbs up. We do the same thing. We have a lot of the same mannerisms. They have my teeth. It's just everything. It's creepy. And all of the good and all of the bad. And so when you spend any time with them, you feel like you've spent time with me. My daughter is so much like me. She loves to sing everywhere we go. Like we sing a lot. She sings Walk Around the Stores, and I sing with her. We make up songs and stuff, and we're very similar that way. Very outgoing. We all love to talk, and we never meet strangers. But if you spend time with my kids, it seems like you spend time with their dad. And so I think that's what he's saying is when we spend time with other people who are made in the image of God, it's like we've spent time with their Father. And so that's what each of us get to carry is the image of God. We get to be Jesus in a relationship to people and bear the image of our Father. So if you're living today and you're going, okay, I get this, man, that sounds great, awesome, we bear the image of God, we have to get known by one another, but it's tough, it's hard, it's uncomfortable, I'm just not sure. People are messy, I don't want to be vulnerable, what if I get hurt too much? The question I want to ask you is, what if you're missing out on something even better? What if you're settling for too little? What if there's more beyond the hurt? See, I think the cool thing about trusting God and who he says you are, and then in turn trusting his people, is that if you do get hurt, and that is going to happen because we are human, and we hurt people without thinking about it sometimes, and that does happen, and it stings, and I understand that. But the thing that's important is when you know who God says you are, it's a lot easier to go, man, my identity is not tied up in what that person thinks about me. My identity is tied up in the one who created me, what he thinks about me. And so I'm going to risk it again because I know God restores, God repairs, God rebuilds, and I'm going to be vulnerable again because I want somebody to see Jesus in and through me. So it's almost circular. Trust God, be vulnerable, love other people. If you get hurt, you just trust God further. You love people harder. You're more vulnerable. God just continues to reveal himself in and through you. So what if you get hurt? My question is, what if you miss out? What if there's so much more beyond it? So as we close, I'm going to ask a couple of questions of you. Is it possible today, is it possible, as you consider your life, is it possible that you are not living a full life, that your life is incomplete, like we said in the beginning, because you're not being known by people and you're not knowing other people? Consider that. Is it possible? I think we all have different capacity to do this. I don't think everyone's going to have like 30, 40 people that they're going to be really tight with, they're going to go deep and vulnerable with, but I think we all have the capacity to do that with some people. I think we're built for that. I think that's how we were created. We all need people like that in our lives. What if we're missing out on something? What if we decide we're going to hop on the roller coaster, we're going to white knuckle it the whole time, we're going to scream in fear and exhilaration because it's at the same time the scariest and the most incredible thing we could do. But at the end we realize, man, I just want to do that again. I've been missing that my entire life. Maybe the problem is we just can't imagine everything that's been promised to us. There's a quote by C.S. Lewis, a great author and pastor. He gave this sermon one time called The Weight of Glory. And there's this incredible passage in there I heard years ago, and I've hung on to it because it made such a big impact on me. And it says this. It says, if we consider the unblushing promises of reward and the staggering nature of the rewards promised in the Gospels, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. We are far too easily pleased. We value comfort way too highly. We value not being hurt and not experiencing pain way too much. So what if we could experience that fullness that we talked about if we just became vulnerable and were known to one another? If we allowed God to tell us who we are and use his people to reinforce who we are? What if we just are far too easily pleased? We're just scared to do it. Don't settle for less. Don't settle for less than what God has for us. So our goal today, my goal is, I know that one message is not going to change everyone's hearts. I know only God can do that. I believe that. But my hope for today is that you would just consider the possibility that there's something else. Just consider the possibility that by making yourself known to somebody and opening yourself up to the potential of getting hurt, I know it's scary. I know it could be painful. But there could be so much more on the other side if we just allow God to do what only he can do. Maybe, just maybe, we'll get a chance to see Jesus like we've never seen him before. We'll get a chance to experience love and acceptance and being known like we've never had before and find fullness of life. God has offered it to each and every one of us. He's offered a full life to each and every one of us today. It's a life filled with interactions with him through the very people who bear his image, who look just like their Father. So the question today is, will you take a step today to being known? Let's pray together. God, we are grateful. God, we're grateful for the way that you reveal yourself to each and every one of us. God, through your people, God, some of us, we've never even thought about the fact that you could show up, but you're not avoiding us, God. You just want to use the people that you've made in your image who are becoming love. to reveal yourself to us. God, tell us who we are today. God, may we in turn, as people that bear your image, may we tell each other who they are. That we are loved, we are chosen, we are accepted, we are set apart, we are distinct, we are holy. God, if there's somebody here today that doesn't know what that means, if there's someone here today that's never accepted that truth about themselves, God, we would love to have that conversation with them and be able to tell them who they are. And give us the opportunity to do that. God, may we be known, may we be vulnerable, may we risk pain and hurt and lay aside comfort for the sake of knowing you and becoming love. And we pray all this in your name today. Amen. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm going to be down in front of the end. I would love to talk to you guys. There's a few folks out of the blue shirts and What's Next that would love to have a conversation with you. We can help in any way. Thank you guys so much for being here. Y'all have a great day.